Hello, everyone. I was just, shocked we are live. Hello, everyone. Nice to see you again. I'm very happy, Rocky, to see you again live with me in this session today. It's really nice to have you with
Hello,
me.
everyone.
So I'm really happy because there was, I think, several weeks that we had some kind of holidays, so we were not able to stream. Then there was a kind of session where I was not involved because unfortunately I had a COVID. I think this was in that time or something like that. So that's why it was perfect. It was great, but I was missing this action, to be honest. So I love to be here. I hope, Rocky, on your side is the same.
Yes, yes. So we miss to be together. I think few
Yes,
months.
dream
But
team, dream team.
yes, but today we are together just to remember about all experience. Yes.
So you think we should take again the old hardware and old discussions, let's say, again, showing the people how old we are and that we know
Yes.
all those old topics? No, we will not do that. We will show the guys that we know the things which are happening just now. For example, the hot topic is definitely metaverse. And you know that we as a company, I think not, I know that you know, Rocky, but I'm talking to audience now. I'm sure that you know that we are covering now metaverse as a separate and as a particular country in our portfolio. So for us, there is no difference between Germany and metaverse. And because we like the hot topics, we love them. We have, of course, now webinar or workshop more prepared for the retailers and for the post software vendors about Web3. How to move in the Web3, how to understand it, what is blockchain, what are the cryptocurrencies, what are the NFTs, how to use the NFTs in the concept of retailing, what about customer loyalty, how to create the new product portfolios, and so on. So all these topics, we are really good in all those topics in the moment. And we would like to invite you, if this is interesting for you, talk to us and we can organize and run the workshop for you. But today, we will not talk about this kind of hot topics. Nevertheless, we have a hot topic as well. Today, we will talk about the standardization in retail, especially. Definitely, standardization in the IT is very important. But I think in the systems and in the industries, like, for example, retail, it's even more important. And why? Because the systems are very big, they are very complex. And you can imagine the situation if you have to develop millions of different topics to integrate millions of different systems at the end. The standardization is very important and very welcome, I'm sure. But before we go into the detail, let me give you some organizational topics. We are streaming every second Tuesday, and we will continue now with this frequency. So you can expect us in 2 weeks again. And then we will have again the session called Retail Talks, like we have today. We are streaming on YouTube and on the LinkedIn. So in case that there are any kind of technical problems, for example, on LinkedIn, unfortunately, we had a couple of times before, we had some technical problems. In case that this happens, we will post the link to the YouTube channel as well, and you can switch to the YouTube channel easily, and you can follow the stream over there. Then we would really be happy to have some comments from you. Like, for example, what do you think about the topics that we are talking about? You can ask the questions. We will grab them and we will answer them during the session as well. It should be definitely some kind of interaction or interactive session. I think this is the most valuable for all of us. So then let me give you some very important information about us, about the company which is hosting this kind of events. We are called Fiscal Solutions because we are focused on fiscal topics. That's why later, if we are talking about the standardization, we will mostly talk about the standardization in the area of the fiscal topics, but other topics we will touch as well. We are existing since 19 years, so we are not really startup. We already had lots of issues during this history, and we are still there, and we are still strong, and we are growing. So I think this is quite good and nice to hear and nice to say, definitely. We are active in 21 countries. This is not bad. And we are covering 22 different fiscal laws. because some of the countries, and I think the Bosnia is a very interesting example, are covering even two different fiscal laws within one country. So this is even more complex than simple, let's call it like that, fiscal law in country like, for example, Germany or all others. So basically, we have not that many products. We have just 4 products. One of them, and the first one, is a Fiscal Portal. This is like an online portal where you can download easily all interesting and important data regarding the countries that we are covering. So if you are looking for the fiscal laws, if you are looking for the technical explanation how to develop fiscal laws, if you are looking for the best practices in all those countries, you can easily go there and download the documents. Those documents are prepared for us, actually, for our development. So this means they are proven by the real developers because we are using them to develop our own products. This means if you have them, you will be able immediately to develop your own, for example, POS application. You can save lots of money and lots of time and lots of efforts with this product. Product number 2 are the workshops. And I just mentioned in the beginning, workshop related to the metaverse. We have for each country which we are covering, separate workshops, of course, dedicated workshops, where we are sending 2 specialists, technical one and legal one, to you. It means virtually or even on the premises if needed, to discuss the fiscal law in that country. We are delivering, let's say, consulting, delivering the knowledge to you. But we are also in that workshop creating the concept which is the most suitable for you in that country. It makes sense to talk to the specialist. And what is even the most interesting, let's say, after that workshop, I'm sure you know that, after the transfer of the knowledge was done, you will have some questions definitely, but don't worry because we have a 30 days of warranty. It's like a warranty, we call it warranty, where you are able to ask whatever you like about that workshop that we had. So this is quite interesting. And this is free of charge, by the way. So you pay the workshop, but you are not paying the 30 days of warranties. Quite unique. The third product that we have is actually a software module that you can integrate in your POS application easily, more or less like a standard. We will talk about that as well. And then immediately you are able and good to go in all those countries that we are covering. Of course, there are lots of changes and lots of efforts that you have to do in your POS application and even maybe in other applications. But by the usage of this kind of modules, which we are providing, or other companies as well, is really, really big because you can reduce your own efforts dramatically. So think about that. The number 4, and this is the last product that we have, is a kind of help desk. We are calling it help desk, fiscal help desk. Whatever you have in the countries where you are running our solution, which if you have any kind of issues, it doesn't matter if those issues are related to the legal topics or to the technical topics or to the business related processes or whatever, we are there to help you. Of course, related to the fiscalization and everything what is connected with that. We call it fiscal help desk, but it's usually used by the IT guys in the country or in the head office, and in many cases also from the local person which is responsible, let's say, to run the retail business in the country. It's a definitely nice and interesting issue as well. So this so far about the company. Let us introduce ourselves a little bit, and I would like to start with our back office. We have very good and very nice support on the back office. Anna, nice to have you with us.
Hi there. Hi, Darko. Thanks for introducing me to the audience. I will be in the back office today. If you have any issues, please write down in the comments and I will try to fix them. And enjoy the retail talks today. This is a very interesting topic.
Wait a second. Don't move. Don't go away. I want to tell something to the audience. She told me before we started this event that she don't like to work with me. Really? And I asked her why.
That's not true.
It's true. And she told me because you are always changing the concepts and then spontaneously doing something else. Sorry for that. Sorry for that. But it's the way like it is. So guys, if you have any kind of questions, just please go on with that. Then I have then excuse, why I changed the concept, because I had to. The audience asked for that.
Darko is an amazing speaker, but he's a nightmare for the back office because we have to change the banners and fix everything, and it's hard to follow the Darko's talking, but it's gonna be great. Darko is always great to listen to.
I'm happy to have you in the back office, definitely. Thank you very much for your help and support. See you later. Roland, now it's your turn. Tell us some words about yourself.
Finally, to say a few words. Yes, Darko want to change today's topic to cloud, but we didn't.
This would be a really big change, yes.
So we still need to fix the agenda to talk about OMG. And so what I can say, finally a few words, because Darko usually can talk, I think, 2 hours without taking a breath, but at least she have a good stories always. So hello everyone, my name is Roland Zaliszewski. I'm sitting here in Novi Sad. Darko is in Germany, yeah? And I started my career as programmer many years ago, and then we started with a company, it's called Service Plus with Borislava and Darko. And interesting topic was that we had a very interesting first project. The really first project in my experience in retail project was to fiscalize Metro Cash and Carry, which was one of the biggest retailer in our country, which is came. Even before I started this job, when I applied to work in Service Plus, I heard about Project Metro, but I even didn't know what is the Metro. I thought Metro, it's a Metro underground, yeah. And later on, I realized it's a retail company, it's not an underground Metro. And one of the first job what we done is to set up to Metro Cash and Carry in Serbia, and it was an introduction in the new fiscal law that year. So they come to Serbia, and it was not just to open new country, it was also try to integrate with the complete new fiscal law, and it was even changing the VAT law, so it was a lot of changing, and it was a really good challenge, and I learned a lot of things because I experienced how complex can be the fiscal integration project, and also I saw that you need to have a lot of different skills to fulfill these kind of projects. So you just to understand the law, to understand technique. You even need to be smuggler. Darko, you remember? Darko was a smuggler.
Yes, very good.
We were together in the project.
I will tell the story in a few seconds. Yeah.
Yes, and he was responsible for the smuggling fiscal printers to Germany. So it was a very excited project. I think it was leave a big impression even today if I think about that project. So I think yes, I can say I'm mature in the fiscal world, that it was more than 18 years that I ran my first fiscal project.
So you introduced me already partially, so as a smuggler. So so let me give you the background of that story. So at that time point, I was on holidays in Serbia, and with my family. And then suddenly we were successful and we got the project. So this was great. But one of the main conditions, let's say, or requirements of the project was to be able to deliver the fiscal printer very fast, within 1 day or something like that, to the head office of Metro. And they should then start the integration. And of course, the integration takes time, especially if we are talking about the software and the fiscal topics. So we thought what to do if we have to send the printer with typical logistical structures and ways and so on. It could take several weeks on one side. On the other side, I'm even not sure if it's legally okay to send the printer out of the country. Some countries are reacting very, I don't know, restrictive about that, because there are some kind of cryptography relating, I think, topics in the fiscal memory, something like that. So we had to be very careful. So what to do? I decided to do it by myself, to put the printer into the car, to put the family on top of the printer. So it's looking like, family is traveling back home. So it's good. And I smuggled it on that way to Düsseldorf. And it was good. Nobody was really investigating and searching the car on the border, and we were able to develop or first deliver the printer and then develop the integration. So it was a really interesting topic. What I want to say, and Roland started with that, fiscalization can be real adventure. It's not just, something that you have to develop. It's up to you what you make out of that. Sometimes for us, it's a real adventure. Let me give you several words about myself. I'm almost that old as Roland. I started also in the
Even older,
1 year older, yes, so a little bit. I started as well as a developer and moved then to the project management and even the sales and account department. Several years I was able to lead the developers, around 400 of them, from a very famous company called Diebold Nixdorf. And it was really challenging time because we had to work in very complex international environments, in very complex international projects. But I'm very thankful and grateful for that time because I learned a lot. And all those knowledge, of course, I was able to transfer to the colleagues and to develop them together with Roland and Borislava, the company that is today talking to you. So I'm very happy about that. But today, and by the way, this is Sam. If you hear this guy, it's a big boy, Sam. Today we will talk about the standards. Let me maybe give you a short facts, let's say, or ideas. Why do we think that standards are so important? And I think the most important, especially for the retailers and post-software vendors, are the costs. Because if you are able to reduce the costs by using some kind of standards, then the standards are great. If the standards are creating the higher costs because they are very complex to implement, then nobody will use them and they are not interesting. So this means the standards by themselves are good only if they are creating real benefits. But I see several very interesting aspects of the standards and directly related benefits. For example, as we started our company, we were not sure how to establish some kind of the processes, for example, service processes and support processes. And now you can try to imagine something and to create something, but it's only in your head and you are not sure if this process that you are just creating is the right one. But if you would have some kind of standards which is created by the smart people and smart companies, like a best case or like a best practice, then it would be very easy. You just take it and you implement it. You don't need to think something differently or to create something new. You can take some kind of standard and with the time you can adapt it and you can tailor it, let's say, to your own needs. So this means it's perfectly, if you have to establish some kind of new business, some kind of new processes, absolutely great. So that's if we are talking about the business-related standards. If we are talking about the technical-related standards, especially in the complex environments which are international, just think about the costs which you would have without standards. Means in every country that you are going, you will definitely need to develop different software, to integrate different components, to use the different hardware. And if there is no standard which is helping you to integrate all those elements, like for example peripherals on the POS, you will develop again and again and again and again more or less the same thing, same piece of software. So this means your cost would increase dramatically. So this is one of the very interesting aspects, which is definitely giving the retailers and the big companies advantage if there are the standards. On the other side, standards are not that good for the manufacturers, because if you have a standards and many manufacturers and vendors of the solutions are following them, those guys are getting or becoming exchangeable. This means if the retailer can easily exchange the piece of hardware, okay, so this means the retail manufacturer of the hardware, for example, or software, have to find some kind of other differentiation elements, attributes, or whatever, and not by using the systems which are, let's say, very dedicated and very specific for them. So this means the negotiation position of the retailer will be much better if he can or could exchange the manufacturer just like that. So this means this is again the kind of let's say, saving of the costs for the retailer if he is able to negotiate with more power, let's say. So this means there are lots of standards, especially for the retailers, or lots of benefits for the retailers if the standards are existing. If we have to talk about which standards are maybe that important or more important for the retailer than others, I think there are 2 or 3 which are quite international and really accepted and really good. And even my company, our company, is targeting to implement them officially, let's say. One of them would be, of course, ISO 9001. This standard is really good because it's showing or targeting the processes of the company and the quality of those processes. And we are, as a company, already working according to those processes, and now we are targeting the official certification. And you can imagine, if there is official certification, this kind of official certification, it's directly showing how good is the company that has those kind of certificates. Again, benefit for the retailers and benefit for the vendors as well. If you're talking about the security, and nowadays this is a very important, even I think most important element, especially in retail, and especially if we are talking about the payments and data and so on, then the standards like 27001, this is definitely a standard which has to be implemented if you are working with a sensible data, and payments is always related to the sensible data. So these are just 2 examples about general standards, but there are lots of others which could be implemented and which are really beneficial for the retailers and vendors as well. If we talk about the technical standards, so it means we are coming back now to the POS software and to the POS environment. I think I have to mention at least 2 of those standards which are most important, but there are several others, and I think during discussion today, Roland will give you even more details about other standards as well. But I want to mention just 2 of them. One is UPOS. UPOS is actually a standard which is defining the way how the POS should communicate with the hardware, with the peripherals or in retail. Roland will explain you a little bit more about that later. And the second one, which is related to the data of the retailer, it's called POS-log. And now there are several aspects of the usage of these standards. But you can imagine if you are able to create the data model, which is de facto standard and which is good to use and best case and best practice standard, it is definitely easier to develop the software, because then you know what is the base of the software that you have to develop. You don't need to think and create such a complex topics by yourself. If we are talking about those areas, I just mentioned 2 areas which have standards like UPOS and POS-log and which could be used. But unfortunately, there are areas, especially in the retail IT, which are not standardized yet, but from our point of view, they should be. For example, the payment area. Payment area is still big pain for the retailers, because in each country, he has to develop different integration, for example, with EFT terminals. And every bank in every country has own protocol, and even every country has additional some kind of security features, clearing features, and so on. So the integration itself is different from country to country. And now imagine if you have the retailer like IKEA, I think they are in 24 countries or something like that, or even more. And if they are developing in each country, again, the integration with the payment systems doesn't make sense. If we would have a kind of standard, and it should be quite easy to develop this kind of standards, it would be really, really useful. Another area, which is very similar to the payment, it's fiscalization. We have today in the Europe, I think around 70% of the countries that are fiscal, and worldwide, something about very similar like that, maybe 50 or 60%. I'm not quite sure, but in Europe are around 70%. And all of them are different. All of them. So the retailer has to develop again and again and again and again, actually the same thing. It should be technically possible to do that, to standardize all those issues. And actually, there are organizations, and I'm very happy about that, which are trying to synchronize at least the work and to create some kind of standard which could help us in the matter of the fiscalization. And I want to mention just 2 of them. One is International Chamber of Commerce. It's a more European, let's say, initiative and organization, which is there was just recently, a couple of months ago, working group created over there, which is taking care and pushing more and more the standardization of the fiscalization. It's a really great topic, and we are active in this working group as well. I think this is important. And then there is a more international group called OMG, and this is the group that we will talk today about. OMG is actually non-profit organization. I will give you later more details about that, which is helping the retailers on the international level, let's say, to create the standards. But before we go into the detail about OMG, let me ask just Roland in between to give us more details about UPOS, because I think it's important to show you first the example, let's say, a real life benefit of the standard. So maybe, Roland, you could explain a little bit more UPOS,
Yes.
UPOS, sorry,
Yes.
which we will then use later to explain.
If we talk about OMG and ART, then the most two famous and most used standards are POSLOG and UPOS. Even UPOS, it's even more used. Why? Because the UPOS, it can solve a lot of things, not just benefit when you try to compare prices between two suppliers. The other benefits. So typical example can be the POS printer, which has to be integrated in the POS application. Usually, the printer supplier provides several options for integration. Sometimes they have some own kind of protocol. If you try to implement this kind of protocol, then you will depend on the disk printer. So some of them even provide Epson-based standard. It's an escape sequence, but this is actually low-level format where you need to send the different escape characters, and this is not really standardized. So there are different versions and variation of this escape sequence protocol. And then also, if you try to change the printer, even printer suppliers, you need to make some work. And one of the best approaches, and the approach which is really common and well used in many retailers, is the UPOS. There is a UPOS standard which has implementation on JavaPOS and OPOS. Maybe it's even more known. It is a two version of implementation. We can talk about OPOS. For example, OPOS will help to connect the POS and printer and other retail peripherals to do POS. Yes, and if you try to integrate then this POS printer, for example, you can do it very simple and very easy. So it's a nice documented, and it's already supported for different languages. So you don't need to do low-level programming. So interesting things that I experienced in the past. For example, even some local suppliers, local retailers, are implemented the low-level protocols. And it was, for example, problems in countries that if you are not was able to buy printer at that moment, they are then get different printers, and they was not able to use it. It is not just a matter of the price. It is not just a matter of the development. It also can be a matter of opening the store, because everything happens. So good thing for this UPOS, OPOS, and JavaPOS is that usually it's provided for all suppliers. So I think in last 10 years, I not saw any kind of POS printer which not supports this standard. So you can really rely on this. And if you implement once UPOS post printer, then you can use any kind of printer which is available on the market, and you can use it in the same way. So I think this is a really practical and good benefit. So someone who is not familiar maybe with the development and the retail integration, it's a similar things. Is if you in everyday usage use a printer and the Windows, you have a Windows driver which is also standardized, and you can connect any kind of printer what you buy and just use it. The UPOS is actually same, but it's related to the retail devices.
Maybe I can add some context, let's say, or some historical topics which will explain a little bit more also the OMG and everything what is behind that organization. So actually the first organization which created UPOS was the group called Association for Retail Technology Standards, or ARTS. So this was the organization, basically consisting of different major, let's say, retailers, worldwide leading retailers, and worldwide leading manufacturers of hardware and software. So this means the companies like Epson, Diebold, IBM at that time, Toshiba, and all those very important, well-known producers of the hardware and software, they were in this organization. As a part of their work in that organization, they created a standard which they promised to implement all of them. So this means that Toshiba agreed about that, IBM agreed about that, and Diebold as well, and so on. And then after the agreement, they started manufacturing the hardware according to that standard. So this means it was easily later for the retailer, for example, to exchange the hardware because the interfaces to those devices were the same for Epson, Diebold, or IBM printer. This was a really, really huge benefit. And now going back to the more present, unfortunately, ARTS, and by the way, ARTS was belonging to the organization called National Retail Federation. And this was the US-based organization. And mostly, that's why it's called, of course, national. And it was mostly driven by the national companies, but international companies were part of that as well. But let's say the management of this organization was in US. This was quite okay, and the standard was perfect, everything fine. But in 2017, this organization, ARTS, decided to become more, let's say, international, and to become more, better structured and even better controlled with better processes inside to be able to create more standards and even faster. And that's why they moved from the ARTS itself to the OMG. So actually 2017, ARTS become OMG. And all those companies which are part of the ARTS are now part of the same group within OMG. So they are still there. They are still working on the standards, worldwide famous companies, but under the umbrella of OMG. So this is somehow to understand, let's say, the different areas.
I can add some differences between OMG and ARTS. Actually, the ARTS and NRF, it's more a retail organization. They don't have a well-settled process for standardization, and they actually not specialized to make a standard. So OMG itself, it's a really organization which actually have a very good defined process for standardization, and they defined a lot of standards, and also they accepted around the globe. Even the OMG is called a small ISO because they also structured, and the process is based on the ISO steps. They are simpler. For example, if you want to introduce one standard in OMG, it can take, for example, 2 years. If you go to ISO, then you can maybe need 4 or 5 years. So it's simpler, but what is also important, if the standard is accepted by OMG, then we can say that it's already done some pre-work if you want to continue and be standardized as ISO, which is the, I think, well and most accepted organization for standardization in the world. So you already done something. So this is a big difference if you compare to NRF and the ARTS, because they are mainly the retail organization, which actually doesn't produce standard itself. So it's different kind of organizations.
Let me just add 2 points, which I think are very important as well. So first, OMG and ISO, to differentiate them. So Roland explained this perfectly, but I heard somewhere the definition like this, that OMG is free to use, and whatever they produce, it's free of charge. Mm-hmm. And ISO is more commercial, but at the end, they are even exchanging the information. And I even heard that some of the processes started and were created on the beginning in OMG, and then they moved slowly to the commercial environment and commercial part or organization, which is actually ISO. They were somehow reworked on or adapted, and then the new ISO version was created. But this is not always the typical process. So this is just in some of the cases, as I heard. So. Another important topic, ARTS was not only technical organization, so it was not just creating the technical documents. For example, I explained you in the beginning that it's very helpful if those standards can help the retailer to create, for example, the processes. because you don't know simple how to create them, and you are maybe not that, you don't have this kind of experiences like many companies together. In arts, there are several standards which are related, for example, to the RFPs, means request for proposal. Imagine the situation that you are a big international retailer and that you want to change the POS application. And this not just in one country, but maybe in 20 countries. What are actually the questions that you should ask the software provider? Usually nobody is Superman. And even I, who has a lot of experiences in retail, I'm also not Superman, and Roland is also not Superman. So you can even not imagine what would be important to ask the POS software provider if they have, for example, this kind of feature, if they are solving this problem or that problem. You simply don't know, because the area is very big. And arts created a great job to create this kind of standards where you have lots of different questions that you should ask, for example, the provider of the POS software, in order to be able to create the evaluation of those offerings which they have. And these standards are now as well defined with OMG as technical standards as well. So OMG is now covering also not technical standards like RFPs, for example, in order to continue the work which arts was doing. So, but maybe let's talk a little bit more about standards which they are defining and how is this organized and how is this working. Roland, maybe you can give us an overview about organization and how is the work done.
Yes, as Darko mentioned, the OMG is not standardized the technical things, so they do much more things. For example, there are some well-known standards which are quite have a long history. One of the most, for me, well-known, and I know even more than 20 years, it's a UML. It's a Unified Modeling Language, which is responsible used for develop modeling language in the field of the software engineering in order to represent the different processes and modules in the programming activities. Also, there is a CORBA. CORBA, it's a standard for vendor independent communication. If you have different solutions and system based on different operating systems, so you have then the issues like a low Indian, big Indian, so sending different data to different systems. Then, for example, this is, typical technical standard. Then you have also standard business process modeling and notification standard. This is example of also similar like an UML, but this is used in a business process. And also, for example, one very interesting standard, which is not technical, it's called the FIBO. So it's a financial industry business ontology. This is very interesting standard. So it's actually responsible to define the core elements which are make a found in financial industry in order to communicate, because you can use different terms for similar things, or you can use same terms for you can then easily understand each other in communication. So it's a more standardization of verbs and sentence and definitions used in communication. So in overall, there is more than 100 standards in OMG. They are defined in different areas. There are areas like robotics, healthcare, finance, space, government, information services, etc. So there's really a lot of area where these standardizations are defined and applied. And how the OMG works in order to define these standards. So actually the OMG organization is split to two different committees. So there are platform and domain committees. So we are actually active in the retail domain task force, which are work on retail specific standards and specification. This retail DTF, it's actually created by moving this part of organization from the arts and NRF to OMG. It was in 2017. And they are also, together with this moving, also these existing standards which are defined by arts, like a POSLog, UML, are also moved to OMG. So in this retail domain task force, we are working on maintenance of existing standards like a POSLOG or Unified POS version 1, or we are working definition of the new standards. So this always there are two different activities are ongoing. So we have a regularly for every week 4 meetings per month or every weekly based meetings. We are discussing about actual topics, about standards, about upcoming meetings, about application of these standards in real life. And 4 times per year, usually in US, once per year in Europe, there is a this is a technical meeting, which is face-to-face meeting where we have a chance to meet together, because usually the members which are working on these domain task forces are coming around the world. For example, in retail domain task force, there are people which are attending for Japan, for Germany, then for example, from Mexico, from US. So it's a really small world in one area, and there are really big companies like Toshiba, like Epson, like Microsoft. So it's an interesting group of people which have a very deep knowledge about very specific things.
Let me just use the small break to say hello to Pema, to Bhutan. Nice to see you. Nice to have you with us. Very good guy. He is also in our class, master class in the Ape School. And the Ape School is, let's say, a part of our business, which is taking care of education in the cryptocurrency, blockchain, and NFTs world. Nice to see you, my friend. Yeah, so let's go a little bit further, more into the details about our work. Let me just give to the context and the background. We started our work in OMG in 2017, so a couple of months before Arts was moved to OMG, and we are now already 5 years in that organization, so it's a quite long time. And before we started this event, I had an interesting discussion with Roland. He asked me not to tell that he is leading the working group. Of course, there is no formal leader, and it's not that kind of organization. But you know, the people are like a very good team over there, and everybody is leading that group because everybody is following the same target to create the standard. And you have to know that we are the company which is mostly working only with the fiscal topics. And that's why we are pushing this standard the mostly. So that's why I'm telling that Roland is leading this group, because it's our main business to do that. It's our main business to push and create transparency in the fiscal environment. All other companies are doing other things as well. If we are talking about Epson, for example, they're not only taking care about fiscal environments and fiscal laws, they are producing the retail printers, receipt printers also for other countries. So we have the focus on the fiscalization, and that's why we are pushing these kind of things, because we strongly believe that the way forward is the way of standardization on the international level. So this was good explanation, right, Roland? Tell me this was good. Yes. Okay, very good. The question is now, what are we expecting as a fiscal specialist? What will happen as a next, and what can happen as a next? Maybe I will give you first my thoughts and opinions, and then I would like to ask Roland to give me, let's say, the work update and what is the next to expect in the context of the work. What I'm expecting that we are able in a certain time to create very transparent, let's say, the new standard. I'm sure that this will not happen tomorrow. And this kind of standards take a long time. Not because the people are not smart enough to write the standard, but imagine how many different countries you have, which are fiscal and which have different requirements. So the first step in creation of the standard is to check all those requirements and to create some kind of common list of common functions, let's say. Only after that you can create some kind of standards. You cannot just create the standard out of the air and out of the nothing, because then the countries would never implement that, and the manufacturer, because it's not useful. So that's why it takes time. So I'm expecting that at least 2-3 years will be needed till standards are defined and used in the countries. But what is all 2-3 years? This isn't actually nothing. We are just already now 5 years in the organization, doing on other standards, working on other standards as well. But this is not that long time. So I think 2-3 years would be okay. It would be helpful for the retailers. But maybe, Roland, yes, could you continue? Could you grab this and give us more?
It's a good introduction because it's a really long time process. So I can give an example. For example, the first version of the Opus, which is actually the base for the UPOS, which is we already mentioned, was done in 1995. So actually, it was defined by Microsoft, NCR, Epson, and Fujitsu ICL as a standard for integration for the scanner and the POS printer. And until then, so it's already 37 years. Yeah, we have a version 1.16 today. So actually, it's even. We don't have a second version. We have a version 1.16 after 35 years, and it's still used. So, and we already, the first idea to create a UPOS version 2 was 10 years ago. So, and it's still not done, but in the last few years, we are really done the big movement. So, and I can say it's an ongoing project, and we are working almost every week. We make some activity in order to finalize this UPOS version 2. It will take a time, but we are working on that. So actually, this is one of the most, I can say, this is one of the topics where we spend the most of time. It's a UPOS version 2, which has to be finally realized. We decided to split this UPOS standard 2 in several sub projects, and this is why we decided to start it with Fiscal API. This is a part of the UPOS 2. Also, there is a standardization, ongoing standardization of digital receipt, which is very interesting. It was a initiative came from Japan because they want to standardize the communication to manage digital receipt and store. And it was the idea for Epic Games to be completely digital, but they already done something in the practice, but the standard still not finished. So actually, we also, I think in next year, we hopefully will finish these digital receipt standards. And also there is one interesting area where also it's a work, it's a ontology for the, so it's similar like in retail there is a lot of terms which is used in different for describe the different processes or objects, and it's hard to define correct and well-known wording for these things, especially in fiscalization. For example, in fiscalization, this is a good example because there is a no English native speaking country where the fiscal law is introduced, and then you can imagine how different type of specification and translation of these texts you can find, and different wording. So I think it's a very important work is to define this ontology for fiscalization and for the retail.
So basically, just to repeat, 3 standards that we are working on: UPOS 2.0, which includes also Fiscal API.
Yes, and Fiscal API is a part because the UPOS 2 has 32 different devices. So, and we decided to not define all 32 devices because it's a really long,
I understand,
big task. So we decided to first go with the Fiscal API, which is one of the most complex. And if it solves this, then it will be other devices will be much more easier for standardizing.
So this is the UPOS 2.0. Then we have digital receipt as a second one, and the third one, ontology.
Yes, it's a retail ontology.
Yeah, so I think all of them are very important, of course. Maybe just to give you a short story about the digital receipt, because I was on some kind of emailing list, I don't know, and I got some mails from OMG as well regarding digital receipt. And I was very surprised who is or which parties and which companies are involved in the creation of that standard. What I saw was that Japanese government is a part of the definition of the standard. And this was really surprising for me, because I thought that there are just the technical companies which are inside, but no, there are also governments which are partially taking part on those discussions, let's say, to define the best possible standards. I was surprised about that. I didn't know that. So this is quite interesting. And for the third topic, means for the ontology, let me give you some examples, because I had always the problems with that. For example, if we are talking with the guys which are doing the payment, and if we tell them POS, point of sale, and they say POS, they think if they are talking about POS, it's not the same POS. They are talking about small EFT device where you can swipe your card. If we are talking about the POS, we are talking about cash register. So there is no glossary in the moment where those terms and expressions are defined and standardized, so that if we are talking about the POS, everybody knows this is the POS. So this will be very helpful. Another example is tender and payment media. Some countries are telling you tender, and this is mostly in the US and maybe surrounding Latin America and so on. And in Europe, we are talking more about payment medias. So it's actually the same thing, but we are thinking the same, but using the different terms. So ontology is very, very important.
Yes.
But let's come back to the UPOS 2.0 and especially Fiscal API. Please give us the status of this fiscalization, because I learned that we done something in Canada, I think, and some. Explain us, please.
Yes. So actually, we are around on 50% of the work. So first, I will tell you just to know what is the process to make a standard, and then I will tell you where in this process are. So if you want to introduce a new standard in OMG, this is already defined which steps you need to do. The first step, you need to issue this RFP. It's called RFP, that you need to request for something to make a standardization.
But it's not the same RFP that I was talking about, just for the people to understand. Yes.
So this RFP actually describes what you need to standardize, and then you need to go to OMG architectural board, and then you need to explain them why this topic is so important that you need to make as a standard. And they will ask, they will check the documentation, and then they decide are these topics it's really good enough and important to be standardized and to be in the process for standardization in the OMG organization. So if this is accepted, then the next step is actually to send a letter of intention to the OMG. It means that you will note and make a public that you have intention to submit and make a standard. After you send the intention to the OMG, then you can start with the work. So then the most, of course, complicated and most long process is to create a specification. And we are working on this currently. So we are somewhere around 50% of the protocol and definition. And after we will finish this writing of the technical specification, we need to make an initial submission to the OMG. If we submit this initial submission, the submission will be reviewed by the OMG architectural board, by the other members of the OMG, and also can be reviewed for the other people who are interested about it, because it's published published on the internet. And based on the feedback, you need to make one or more revision of the submission. So until you don't have any compliance about specification, and on the final stages, if the submission is accepted by architectural board, there is a voting. And then in all members which are interested to vote for this standard, they will vote they accept this standard, and this is the official finishing of the first standardization. And then the standard, it goes to maintenance. So actually you're able then later on to make a improvement on standard if you find something that you can improve or maybe extend with the new features. Then you actually do update of the standard. So as I say, currently we are around on the half of the way. So we've done a lot of things until now, but there are still some work, and I expect that we will finish this until end of this year, and then next year we are able to make an initial submission for standardization. So it means we can expect to have standards until end of the next year. So it's maybe long, but if I compare it with how long the UPOS standards leads, so I think it's not so far.
But not only that, you should compare it with the quantity of work. So with the the size of the topic, the size of the cake that people should eat. So it's so big. There are so many countries that you have include. So it's quite really impressive from my point of view.
Yes,
but just
to understand the size, I think the actual version of the UPOS version 1, we have a 1.16 has, I think, 1,600 pages, just to understand how the big a document is.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of work.
Let me just put some marks, let's say, on the process that you just explained us. First, in order to be accepted to start the process and to start everything, you have to show that there is a problem in the world. So that it's not your personal problem or your company problem or the problem of Walmart, for example, is the leading retailer. This OMG group, which is a worldwide organization, they don't care about one company, even if it's that big like Walmart. So the standards should be the improvement of the world problem. And this was the first, I was impressed as I understood that. So you have to go to the people which are smart, lots of them, sitting somewhere in the board, creating many standards from the many different industries, healthcare, finance, technical, and so on. And you have to tell them, hey guys, I know there is a big problem, that world is suffering because of that, and I have solution with my team. This is not easy. So this is really big step to tell them you have to do that, or we could solve that. And now you understand how important is to have the team of the people like we have in this case, or we are working together with them from those big companies and the people which are involved in that. Because as a one company, as a one person, you can never do that. You simply don't understand the world situation, and you are not able to create to understand the problem and to describe it and to start the process. So this is the first topic that I want to just emphasize. The another topic that I would like to say, even if you create with all these teams and all these people, which are sometimes very big teams and lots of people which are involved, even if you create the document which has 1,700 or 600 pages describing all the technical requirements in the real details, this is just the first part. The next part is to talk to those smart people sitting in the board and to tell them, look, this is the solution. And then this solution will be analyzed by the specialist again, and it has to be right. If it's not right, you have to change it. And then even if those guys tell you, yes, everything is perfect, it's fine, then the public space has to check it as well, because there are lots of people around the world which understand the technical issues very good, better than we are understanding them. They have the opportunity to check this standard and to tell everyone, sorry, it's not the right way, we should change that. So this means if you now consider all those steps and the complexity of all those steps, I'm sure that you understand why it takes so long. And why is the quality of those standards really high? It cannot be low, because you see how many people are working on that. So it's really high. Now you can ask, sorry, Roland, just to give another story. You could ask yourself, why is the company like we are forcing the standard? Because actually, if we do that, we would be exchangeable as well. There could be another software provider creating the software with the same standard, with the same API, and the retailer could exchange us easily. True. But I should continue the story of the metro on the beginning of this session, just to give you you will understand immediately everything. The printer that we used at that time point didn't follow any kind of UPOS standard, which was at that time point as important as everything else. It was created by the company, which was great in the production of the fiscal printer, definitely, but they created their own standard. It was not worldwide accepted standard. And Metro told us, you will get the deal if you are able to deliver the printer, and if you deliver for me the standard driver for that, UPOS driver for that printer. So, and then we understood, the standards are not killing us. The standards are creating the opportunities for us. And we done it. We created a software, and this was the beginning, let's say, of our middleware. We created a software for that particular printer, which was helping then the Metro to integrate this printer easier. So instead of losing the business, we won the business. And that's why we think that transparency and the standardization is the right way for the companies and not the other way around. Right? So,
yes, I agree with you.
Thank you very much. It's a real life story. This is what actually happened. So we are just going to the end of.
One note for the Metro, because we just had a change in fiscalization in April, and this software was just changed not so far, a few weeks ago, to the new fiscalization in Serbia. So it was run live almost 20 years. So this is also just to prove that how the process of the changing things in retail is slow. So everything in retail is slow, but it's a huge work.
But can you imagine this? So we created 20 years ago piece of software actually, which was in use for 20 years. And they would use it for the next 20 years if the law didn't change. So it's actually not because they wanted to change, but they were forced to change it. Not bad. I'm proud of that. Roland, thank you very much for this great session. I think our audience has now really valuable information. What is OMG? What is the history of OMG? What is our part in those definitions of standards? What are we working over there? Do you want to add something? Do you have some kind of final comments or whatever? No.
Because if I start, then we go another 5-10 minutes.
2 hours.
And we are already out of time. So I think my comments is be in next weeks when we have a next Retail Talk.
I will be very happy. I'm glad to be back. I was really missing this kind of events. Guys, thank you very much for being there, for being with us. If you have any kind of questions now or later, just contact us. Anna just shared with you the links about us, so means the direct links on LinkedIn. Connect with us. We are ready to chat with you. And don't forget, we have even Discord server, which is creating a kind of community with more than 4,000 people in there. So if you would like to chat about these topics or any other topic like crypto world, Web3 for the retailers, Web3, metaverse or whatever, we are there for you as well. So join us and let's define together the best possible standards. Thank you very much and see you in 2 weeks. Have a nice day. Bye.
Bye.